Welcome back again, everyone. It's DinaKalmeta here. And for today's news, I do have some updates I'd like to share with you. We're going to talk about what's happening in the Middle East, Russia, China, North Korea, NATO, and Cuba. A lot has happened in the last few days, so let's start with the Middle East. President Trump's naval blockade of the Strait is unraveling after dozens of Iranian vessels secretly slipped past U.S. surveillance, even as the regime tightened its grip on the critical oil passageway by attacking 3 tankers. Approximately 34 Iranian oil tankers have slipped through the blockade, with 19 vessels exiting the Persian Gulf past Trump's navy and another 15 ships entering from the Arabian Sea towards Iran. 6 of those tankers were smuggling Iranian crude oil totaling 10.7 million barrels, estimated to be worth approximately $910 million in revenue for the regime. The report follows Iran's seizure of the 2 cargo ships on Wednesday morning in the Strait after attacking those vessels, and a third claiming the ships had failed to comply with the regime's demands. President Trump announced on Tuesday he would extend the ceasefire, but continue the American naval blockade of the Iranian ports as a way of exerting pressure on Iran. And it's being reported that this ceasefire may not last for long. A White House spokesperson said 3 to 5 days. It was supposed to have ended today, but the president has stated that he is extending it. So we shall see what happens. But it is being reported that the president seems wary about prolonging the conflict because of how deeply unpopular it is with the American public and with everyone actually around the world. The report goes on to read that Trump announced on Sunday that the U.S. Navy fired on and disabled and seized the Iranian-flagged cargo ship Tuska in the Gulf of Oman. The president claims the ship ignored several warnings while attempting to breach the naval blockade. After disabling its engine, U.S. Marines took control of the vessel. Trump later bragged about the cargo seized by the U.S. aboard the ship, calling it a gift from China. China, the largest buyer of Iranian oil, has been permitted by Iran to continue traveling through the strait since the start of the war alongside select tankers bound for Pakistan and India. The regime vowed to retaliate against the attack and claimed it still maintained control of the strait despite the blockade. Top Iranian officials compared Trump's action to armed piracy and vowed to ignore U.S. requests for ceasefire discussions. Now, in the meantime, if the ceasefire ends without a deal, President Trump has vowed to eliminate Iran's energy and transportation infrastructure. With that said, it's also been reported that a parade of U.S. Air Force jets have been detected flying near the Middle East on Tuesday. Flight tracking websites show at least 5 C-17 Globemaster III aircraft moving towards Saudi Arabia after leaving a key NATO installation in Germany. Now, this particular mission has sparked theories that the war is ramping up, with speculation growing that the conflict could soon escalate further. So we're getting a lot of mixed messages here. Reports indicate that the aircraft are transporting security equipment, communications gear, logistical supplies, and personnel believed to support the upcoming diplomatic operations. Now, with all of that in mind, here's a report from Michael Schneider. I'm not going to read the entire report, but the headline reads, "This is an end times war, and Donald Trump just threatened to blow up the entire country of Iran." Now, this is dated April 19th, so just a few days ago. But apparently, President Trump told Fox News that if Iran doesn't agree to the deal that he is offering, the whole country is getting blown up. Trump followed that up with a post on Truth Social in which he threatened to blow up every single bridge and every single power plant in Iran. And you can see the post right there. Now, of course, we have never heard of a president of the United States that talks like this. Many pundits are convinced that this sort of talk is tough talk and it will work. Other pundits are convinced that this sort of talk will seriously backfire. So far, the Iranians do not seem to be intimidated at all. So, do you think that the president will actually follow through on his threats? Well, maybe. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. Now, with all of that in mind, enter China. It's being reported that President Trump has written to the Chinese president and has asked him to stop supplying weapons to Iran. Trump claims Beijing has agreed, framing the blockade as beneficial for China and global trade. Now, ahead of a crucial Beijing visit, Trump is projecting cooperation, but with an unmistakable warning signaling a mix of diplomacy and pressure as Washington tries to reshape the geopolitical balance in the Iranian
conflict. So will China stop supplying weapons to Iran? Well, we're just going to have to wait and see. And here comes China's buddy, President Putin, who is encouraging Iran and Washington to return to the Obama nuclear deal. I highly doubt President Trump is going to listen to Putin, but there you have it.
Is peace really possible in this region? Will cooler heads eventually prevail? Well, they could reach a peace deal, but it'll be short and temporary. Because you can't have peace without the Prince of Peace. In fact, we're told in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 that when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Any peace that they make right now, I don't care who it's with, it's going to be temporary. Because without Jesus, there is no peace. And speaking of which, there have been rising tensions from Russia to NATO to North Korea to Cuba. Let's talk about that.
Let's start above our heads, literally. General Stephen Whiting, the head of U.S. Space Command, has issued one of the most alarming warnings in the history of American military intelligence. He says that Russia is planning what he called a space Pearl Harbor, a nuclear detonation in low Earth orbit designed to destroy hundreds, possibly thousands of satellites in a single blast. Think about what that means for one moment. Every GPS satellite, every weather satellite, every military communications network, every financial system that runs on satellite data, gone in an instant, without a single missile ever touching U.S. soil. The general said it plainly. Russia could cause absolute mayhem, interfering with civilian aircraft navigation, crippling military command networks, and blinding the United States at the exact moment of maximum vulnerability. And Washington's answer to that threat is already in motion. NASA, in coordination with the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy, has announced plans to deploy nuclear reactors on the moon. A medium-power reactor in orbit by 2028. A full operational reactor on the lunar surface by 2030. Why? Because solar power has limits. Nuclear fission doesn't. And if Russia's preparing to blind us from orbit, America's preparing to build a power grid beyond their reach, on the moon itself. The space race is back, but this time the stakes aren't national pride, their survival. Now let's come back down to earth and closer to home. USA Today has confirmed exclusively that the Pentagon is quietly ramping up planning for a possible military operation in Cuba. Two sources familiar with the order say this is a real contingency, not a theoretical exercise. And President Trump has left no ambiguity about where his head is. Speaking at the White House, Trump told USA Today that we may stop by Cuba after we finished with this, referring to the ongoing Iranian conflict. He added, and this is a direct quote, "Whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it." The Cuban president's response was equally direct. We will battle, we will defend ourselves, and should we fall in battle, to die for the homeland is to live. But here's a ripple effect that nobody is fully talking about. The Colombian president just issued a stunning warning. If the United States does not rethink its approach to Latin America, the region could explode in a full-scale rebellion. Petro specifically cited the U.S. raid on Venezuela and their president as proof that Washington has crossed a line that no amount of diplomatic language can uncross. This is according to the Colombian president. He compared America's current posture to, and I'm quoting, the system the King of Spain had centuries ago, and the response to the Spanish colonialism, rebellion, he says, and that's what's coming. The Brazilian president, Lula, echoed the sentiment, saying that Trump is playing a very dangerous game. So definitely not a stable backyard for the United States. So we'll see what happens with the United States and Latin America. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, NATO's top military commander, Admiral Rob Boyer, chair of the NATO Military Committee, said that the alliance's greatest fear is not a standalone Russian attack. It's a coordinated move. China acts against Taiwan while simultaneously directing Russia to strike a NATO member. If that happens, the U.S. faces an impossible choice: defend Europe or defend the Pacific. It cannot do both at full capacity, not simultaneously, not with what's happening in the Middle East. And Boyer was blunt. As Russia becomes more economically dependent on China, Beijing gains the power to essentially order Moscow into action. China will not fight NATO, but Russia will. And right on cue, Sweden's chief of defense announced that Russia could seize the strategically critical island of Gotland at any time. He said it doesn't have to be a full-scale invasion. Even a small land grab to test NATO's response would be enough to reshape the entire European security order. Now, of course, NATO is talking about hypothetical futures, but it is on war gaming right now in the Baltic, because NATO had deployed armed fighter jets to intercept Russian military planes flying over the Baltic Sea. The French Rafale fighters were deployed from a Lithuania air base where they are stationed as part of a decade-long NATO air policing effort. The fighters, armed with air-to-air missiles, joined jets from Sweden, Finland, Poland, Denmark, and Romania. They all took to the skies to inspect and keep watch on the Russian flight. But let's move along and talk about what's going on with North Korea. This month alone, North Korea has conducted 7 separate missile tests. 7 in 1 month. The most alarming, Kim personally supervised cruise missile and anti-ship missile launches from his newest warship, 5,000-ton destroyer capable of carrying nuclear-armed ballistic and cruise missiles, built, experts believe, with Russian assistance. Then just past Sunday, North Korea launched multiple ballistic missiles from its eastern Sinpo region, an area known for submarine-launched ballistic missile technology. South Korea's National Security Council called an emergency meeting. Japan filed a formal protest, but the missiles landed in the sea. But the message wasn't for the sea, the message was for Washington and South Korea and anyone watching. Kim said after the test that his government remains focused on limitless expansion of its nuclear forces. He also ordered construction of a 3rd and 4th destroyer. So while America's eyes are on Iran, North Korea is quietly building a blue water nuclear navy. And of course, we cannot leave out this report from Ynet News. Now, this was reported on April 16th, but apparently Russia has threatened to strike drone production facilities across Europe supplying Ukraine, including a Haifa-based company identified by Moscow. Dmitry Medvedev, deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council, said such facilities constitute legitimate targets for the Russian military. In a post on X, he accused European countries of escalating the conflict by significantly increasing drone production in cooperation with Ukraine. Medvedev said that European governments decided in late March to expand unmanned aerial vehicle production, including through increased funding for joint ventures with Ukraine. According to Moscow, Ukrainian drone manufacturers operate branches in 8 European countries, with additional components supplied from countries including Germany, Turkey, Spain, Italy, and Israel. So, is this the beginning of the Gog-Magog War? Ezekiel 38:39. Time will tell.
In conclusion, the pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, are falling perfectly into place. Not by some coincidence, not by accident, but just as the ancient prophets warned. Prophecy is coming alive right before our very eyes. And as always, I'll continue to keep you updated. But I'd love to hear from all of you, so please do leave me your comments below. Tell me what you think about what's going on in the Middle East. What about with NATO and Cuba? I want to hear from you. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit me on my social media pages as well as my website. And don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss a show. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.